I found my husband's secret phone with messages to my sister. "She's pregnant, we'll leave together," he wrote. I installed hidden cameras and discovered a horrifying truth. What the footage revealed sent me straight to the most ruthless lawyer in town. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. My name is Caroline. I'm the woman whose husband, Derek, made our kids release a wild bunny in the middle of our yard. I'd told him, begged him really, to just have the kids take it over to the edge of the woods, into the bushes where it would be safe. But Derek, he always knew better. Or he thought he did. He laughed it off. "It'll be fine, Caroline. It's nature." And it was nature, all right. A hawk, circling high above, saw its chance. It dove, silent and fast, and snatched that poor little creature right off the grass. It all happened in a split second, right in front of our children. My daughter was 5, my son was 4. The sounds they made, it wasn't just crying. It was raw, terrified screaming. They didn't run to him. They ran to me, burying their faces in my legs, their little bodies trembling. From that day on, whenever they got angry with their father, they called him the Bunny Slaughterer. It sounds childish, I know. But looking back, that name feels horribly, chillingly appropriate now. What happened to that little bunny is ancient history compared to what I have to tell you. I'm telling you this as a free woman, a few months after the most brutal divorce you can imagine. So please, make yourself a cup of tea, settle in. This is going to take a while. After the bunny incident, things in our house felt fragile. Derek was angry that I'd even mentioned it online, and it caused a huge fight. He gave me the silent treatment for a week, sleeping on the edge of the bed with his back to me like I was a stranger. I tried to smooth things over. I put the kids in timeout when they used that awful nickname for him. I just wanted peace. Eventually, Derek came around. He mumbled an apology, admitting he should have listened to me. He said he just felt defensive, that he didn't want to be wrong. I accepted it. I even apologized for posting about it. I was desperate to believe we were okay. I suggested marriage counseling, but he shut it down immediately. "There's nothing wrong with our marriage, Caroline," he'd said, with a tone that meant the conversation was over. So I let it go. For a few weeks, a strange, tense peace settled over our home. We went through the motions. We had dinner together. We watched movies. But it was like we were actors in a play about a happy family. Then, one evening, everything changed. I was tucking my daughter into bed, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. The room was quiet, lit only by her little unicorn night light. She looked up at me, her big blue eyes full of something I couldn't quite read. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Can I tell you a secret? A grown-up secret?" I smiled, my heart melting a little. "Of course, sweetie. You can tell me anything." She hesitated, chewing on her lower lip. "But you have to promise you won't be mad at Daddy." A cold knot formed in my stomach. "Okay, I promise." "What is it?" Her whisper was so quiet, I had to lean in to hear it. "On the Saturdays when you go to your book club, Daddy has a special friend who comes over to play." My blood ran cold. I kept my face perfectly still. "Oh. A friend?" "Yeah," she continued, her voice gaining a little confidence. "It's Aunt Audrey." The world stopped. It just stopped. Audrey. My sister. My younger sister. I felt the air leave my lungs, but I forced myself to breathe. I had to stay calm for my daughter. "Aunt Audrey comes over? That's nice of her to visit." I tried to make my voice sound light, casual. "Yeah. But, it's a secret, she said, her eyes wide. Daddy and Aunt Audrey give us extra cookies and let us watch cartoons all day so we don't tell you. They say it's their special secret time. She paused, and then her voice dropped even lower, filled with a child's simple, devastating honesty. They go into your bedroom and lock the door. And sometimes I hear laughing. The kind of laughing you and Daddy used to do. I felt like I was going to be sick. I stood up, my legs shaking, and walked over to her window, pretending to look at the stars. I needed her not to see my face. Everything clicked into place with a horrifying, deafening snap. Derek's recent moodiness. His short temper with the kids. His accusations that I was the distant one. And Audrey. Audrey had been avoiding my calls for weeks, always having an excuse. I'm just so busy with work, Caro. It was all a lie. The whole time, they were. I turned back to my daughter, forcing a smile that felt like it was cracking my face. Thank you for telling me, sweetie. That was very brave of you. I kissed her forehead, my lips trembling. Now get some sleep. I walked out of her room, closing the door softly behind me. I made it to my own bathroom before my legs gave out. I slid down the wall, my hand over my mouth to stifle the sob that ripped through my chest. My husband. And my sister. In my home. In my bed. The betrayal was so absolute, so profound, it felt like it was physically tearing me apart. I spent that night on the bathroom floor, curled into a ball, shaking. I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. It was a deep, hollow shock that made my bones ache. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Derek. Audrey. Laughing. In my room. The image was burned into my mind. By morning, the shock had curdled into something else. A cold, hard resolve. I wasn't going to break down. I was going to find out the truth. All of it. I waited until Derek left for work, his usual peck on my cheek feeling like a brand of poison. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed my phone. There was only one person I could trust. My older brother, Marcus. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial his number. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, Caro. Everything okay? His voice was warm, familiar. It almost broke me. Marcus, I whispered, my voice cracking. I need you. The line went quiet for a second. I'm on my way. He didn't ask any questions. He just knew. An hour later, he was sitting at my kitchen table, a steaming mug of coffee in his hands, his face etched with worry. I told him everything. I told him about the bunny, about Derek's coldness, and then, the words tumbling out in a broken rush, I told him what my daughter had said. I watched his face change from concern to disbelief, and then to pure, unadulterated rage. He clenched his jaw, his knuckles white around his mug. That son of a, he stopped himself, glancing towards the hallway where the kids were playing. He took a deep breath. Caroline. I am so sorry. Is it true? I asked, my voice pleading. Do you think it's true? He looked down at his coffee, and his silence was my answer. When he finally looked up, his eyes were full of guilt. I should have said something, he mumbled. Said something? About what? A few months ago. At Mom and Dad's anniversary party, he began, his voice low. Lorraine and I saw them. Derek and Audrey. They were out on the back porch. I thought they were just talking, but he had his hand on the small of her back. And the way she was looking at him, it wasn't right. It was just for a second, and then they noticed me and pulled away. I told myself I was imagining things. That I was being paranoid. Who wants to believe that about their own brother-in-law and sister? I didn't want to cause trouble over nothing. He ran a hand through his hair, his face full of regret. God, Caroline, I should have trusted my gut. Hearing that, it wasn't a relief. It was like a confirmation of the nightmare. It was real. It had been happening right under my nose, and people had seen signs. I had seen signs. I just didn't want to believe them. It's not your fault, I said, though my voice was flat, lifeless. It's theirs. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes boring into mine. Okay. So what's the plan? We're not letting him get away with this. We're not letting her get away with this. You need proof, Caroline. Hard proof that no lawyer can argue with. What do I do? I felt lost, like a child. You fight smart, he said, his voice firm, pulling me back from the edge. You don't confront him. You don't let him know you suspect anything. You act normal. And while you're doing that, we gather evidence. We'll get him, Caro. I swear to you, we will burn his whole world to the ground. In that moment, sitting in my sunlit kitchen that suddenly felt like a crime scene, my brother's promise was the only thing holding me together. We made a pact of silence. No one else would know. Not yet. This was our war now. Marcus's words became my mantra, fight smart. That night, when Derek came home, I played my part. I asked about his day. I smiled. I pretended everything was normal, even as it felt like my insides were being shredded with glass. Every touch, every word from him was a lie, and I had to swallow it all down. The next morning, following Marcus's instructions, I used my work laptop to go online. My fingers trembled as I typed hidden nanny cams into the search bar. The results were overwhelming. Tiny cameras disguised as phone chargers, as smoke detectors, as picture frames. It felt sordid, like something out of a cheap spy movie. But this was my life now. I chose 3 different kinds, a clock for our bedroom, a USB charger for the living room, and a smoke detector for the main hallway. I also ordered a small, magnetic GPS tracker for his car. I had them shipped to Marcus's office, using my credit card, the one Derek never looked at. The purchase confirmation email felt like a declaration of war. The waiting was the hardest part. For 3 days, I lived in a state of hypervigilance. I analyzed every word Derek said, every look he gave me. I felt like I was losing my mind. The package finally arrived at Marcus's office on a Thursday. He called me. They're here. The plan was set for Saturday. My book club day. The day my daughter said Audrey always came over. The thought made me sick, but it was the perfect opportunity. I told Derek I was leaving, just like always. Have fun, he said, barely looking up from his phone. The casual dismissal, which once would have stung, now fueled my resolve. I didn't go to my book club. I went straight to Marcus's house. He had the devices laid out on his kitchen counter. They looked so small, so harmless. Ready for this? He asked gently. I just nodded, unable to speak. We drove back to my neighborhood and parked down the street, waiting. I'd told Derek I'd be gone for at least 4 hours. We watched as, sure enough, less than 30 minutes after I'd left, my sister Audrey's little blue sedan pulled into my driveway. My driveway. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the dashboard. Okay, he's occupied, Marcus said, his voice grim. He won't be looking for you. Let's go. We used my spare key to get in through the back door, moving like thieves in my own home. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The house was quiet, except for the faint sound of the TV from the living room. Marcus stood guard by the kitchen door while I got to work. My hands were shaking, but adrenaline took over. I swapped the digital clock on our bedside table with the new one. The camera lens was a tiny, invisible dot. In the living room, I plugged the USB charger cam into the wall outlet opposite the sofa. The smoke detector was the trickiest. I had to get a stepladder from the garage, my whole body tense, listening for any sound from the other room. I managed to switch it out, my breath held tight in my chest. Finally, the GPS tracker. We snuck out to the garage. While Marcus kept watch, I reached under the rear bumper of Derek's SUV, feeling for a flat metal surface. My fingers found a spot on the frame, and the magnet clicked satisfyingly into place. It was done. Back in Marcus's car, I pulled out my laptop and followed the instructions. One by one, the cameras connected to the Wi-Fi. And then, my living room appeared on the screen. Grainy, but clear. I could see the back of the sofa. My home, my sanctuary, was now under surveillance. It felt like a profound violation, even though I was the one doing it. I had turned my home into a trap. And now, all I could do was wait for the rats to show themselves. For a week, I watched the footage. It was agonizing. I saw them on my couch, laughing, his arm draped casually around her shoulders. I saw them in my kitchen, Audrey making him a sandwich like she belonged there. I saw them, but I didn't see enough. Not the kind of undeniable proof my brother said I needed. The GPS tracker showed they met for lunch twice near his office, but that could be explained away. A brother-in-law and sister-in-law having lunch. Plausible. I needed more. I needed something irrefutable. So, I devised a new plan. A bigger lie. It was a Tuesday night. We were cleaning up after dinner. The kids were upstairs, supposedly getting ready for bed. I took a deep breath. "Hey," I said, my voice carefully casual. Lorraine and a couple of the girls were thinking of doing a weekend trip. Just a little getaway. We found a great deal on a spa resort up in the mountains. Would you be okay with that? Just for 2 nights. Derek looked up from the dishwasher, a slow smile spreading across his face. It was the most genuine smile I'd seen from him in months. It made my stomach turn. A girls' weekend? Yeah, of course. You deserve it. You've been so stressed lately. He walked over and wrapped his arms around me. I had to fight every instinct to recoil. Go. Have fun. Don't worry about a thing here. I've got the kids. His enthusiasm was like a knife in my gut. He wasn't just agreeable, he was thrilled. He couldn't wait for me to be gone. The next 2 days were a blur of fake excitement. I packed a bag. I talked on the phone with Lorraine, Marcus's wife, who was in on the whole thing, discussing fake spa treatments loud enough for Derek to overhear. "Oh, the hot stone massage sounds amazing," I'd chirped, feeling like the world's biggest phony. On Friday afternoon, I kissed my children goodbye. It was the hardest part. My son clung to my leg. "Don't go, Mommy. I'll be back on Sunday, sweetie," I whispered, hugging him tight, my heart breaking. "You be a good boy for Daddy." Derek stood in the doorway, waving, that same eager smile plastered on his face. "Drive safe. Love you." "Love you too," I lied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I didn't drive to the mountains. I drove 10 miles to a nondescript motel on the other side of town, a place where no one would know me. Marcus had already booked the room. He met me there, carrying a bag of takeout and a laptop. "You okay?" he asked, his expression full of concern as I dropped my suitcase by the door. "No," I said honestly, sinking onto the lumpy motel bed. "But I will be." We set up the laptop on the cheap desk. I logged into the camera feeds. My house looked quiet, empty. On the GPS tracker, I could see Derek's car was still in the driveway. We ate our food in silence, the minutes ticking by like hours. I just stared at the screen, my heart a heavy, cold stone in my chest. This was it. There was no turning back. I had set the stage, baited the trap. And I had a horrifying feeling that the show was about to begin. The first few hours were excruciating. I watched Derek feed the kids pizza and let them watch TV way past their bedtime. It was a pathetic, transparent attempt to be the fun dad. After he finally got them to sleep, he sat on the couch, endlessly scrolling on his phone. The minutes crawled by. I started to wonder if I'd been wrong. Maybe this whole weekend was a bust. Then, at 9:47 p.m., his car's icon on the GPS tracker started moving. "He's leaving," I said, my voice tight. Marcus leaned over my shoulder. We watched the little dot travel across the map, not towards a bar or a friend's house, but straight to the apartment complex where Audrey lived. He was there for exactly 6 minutes. Then, the dot started moving again, heading back towards my house. "He's picking her up," Marcus said, his voice a low growl. My breath hitched. I switched the laptop view to the living room camera. We waited. The front door opened, and they walked in. Derek was laughing. Audrey was holding a bottle of wine. My sister, in my house, holding a bottle of wine she brought to share with my husband. They settled on the couch. My couch. The one I'd spent weeks picking out. He poured the wine. They toasted. I couldn't hear what they said, but I could see the intimacy, the casual ease between them. It was like watching a movie of someone else's life, except it was mine. And then, they started talking. The camera's microphone was surprisingly clear. Their voices filled the cheap motel room, weaving a tapestry of deceit that unraveled my entire world. "Are you sure the kids are asleep?" Audrey asked, her voice a little nervous. "Yeah, they're out cold." "Don't worry," Derek replied, taking a big gulp of wine. He leaned back, draping his arm over the back of the couch, his fingers playing with her hair. "God, it's good to finally relax. Caroline's been wound so tight lately." "Is she suspecting anything?" "Nah. She's clueless," he scoffed. "She's too busy with her book club and her little projects. Thinks this spa weekend was her idea." He laughed, a sound that made my blood run cold. Audrey shifted on the couch, placing a hand on her stomach. It was a small, almost unconscious gesture, but I saw it. And then Derek's eyes followed her hand. He moved his own hand down and placed it over hers, right on her belly. "How's our little secret doing in there?" he murmured, his voice soft. The motel room started to spin. Our little secret. She was pregnant. My sister was pregnant with my husband's child. I felt Marcus's hand grip my shoulder, steadying me. "He's fine," Audrey whispered back, a small smile on her face. "But Derek, we can't keep this up forever. I'm starting to show. What are we going to do? What about the kids? What about your inheritance from her father? We can't mess that up." Derek sighed, leaning his head back. I know. I just need more time. The promotion at work is almost a sure thing, but I need to keep up appearances for a few more months. Once that's secure, and once we figure out the best way to handle her dad's money, we'll tell her." He leaned in and kissed her, a long, slow kiss that I couldn't look away from. "Don't worry," he whispered against her lips. "I'm sick of playing the part of the good husband to a boring woman who makes me feel old. As soon as the money is right, I'm done. We can finally be a real family." Audrey pulled back slightly. "And what about your kids? What about Lily and Ben?" Derek shrugged, a casual, dismissive gesture that shattered the last remaining piece of my heart. "She can have them," he said, taking another sip of wine. "They like her better anyway. We'll have our own do-over baby." I didn't make a sound. I just sat there, frozen, as the man I had married, the father of my children, casually discarded his own family for a new one with my sister. The betrayal wasn't just about cheating. It was about erasure. He was trying to erase me, erase our life, erase our children, all for a promotion and a shot at my father's inheritance. I looked at Marcus. His face was a mask of thunderous fury. He didn't say a word. He just gently took the laptop, closed it, and wrapped his arms around me as I finally started to sob. The tears didn't last long. By the time the sun started to rise, casting a sickly gray light into the motel room, the grief had burned away. All that was left was a core of pure, white-hot rage. It was a kind of anger I had never felt before in my life. It was cold, it was clear, and it was absolute. Marcus had been up all night, sitting in the uncomfortable plastic chair, watching over me. He'd made a fresh pot of terrible motel coffee. He handed me a cup. "What do you want to do?" he asked quietly. His voice was calm, but I could see the fury still simmering in his eyes. I took a sip of the bitter coffee. The heat was grounding. "I'm not going back there," I said, my voice steady, unrecognizable even to myself. "Not to him." "Okay." "I want to destroy him," I continued, the words coming out low and even. "I don't mean I want to hurt him. I mean I want to systematically dismantle his entire life. His career. His reputation. Every lie he has ever told. I want him to have nothing left. And her. I want her to be standing right next to him in the rubble." Marcus looked at me, and for the first time that night, a small, grim smile touched his lips. "Good," he said. "That's the sister I know. So, what's the first step?" I pulled the laptop towards me and opened it. I saved the video files from the night before onto a separate hard drive. Multiple copies. I felt a strange detachment, like I was an analyst compiling a report. This wasn't my life anymore, it was a case. Case file, the complete and utter betrayal. "The first step," I said, looking up at him, "is a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I've seen the commercials on late-night TV. The ones that say, 'Are you in a fight for your life?' I want that guy." I searched online for the top divorce law firms in the state. I ignored the ones with pictures of smiling, friendly-looking people. I looked for the ones with names that sounded like they could break kneecaps. I found one. Harrison and Stone. Their website was all sharp angles and bold, aggressive fonts. I picked up the motel phone, its plastic cool against my skin. It was barely 8 a.m. "I'll make the call," Marcus offered. "No," I said, holding up a hand. "I have to do this." I dialed the number. A polite receptionist answered. "Harrison and Stone, how may I direct your call?" My voice was clear and cold. "I need to speak with your senior partner. I have an urgent and highly sensitive case." "Do you have a referral?" "No," I said. "But I have video evidence of adultery, conspiracy to commit fraud regarding a potential inheritance, and a confession of intent to abandon his children." "Tell him that. My name is Caroline Miller." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, "Please hold." A few minutes later, a new voice came on the line. It was deep, gravelly, and radiated impatience. "Arthur Harrison. What do you have for me?" I took a deep breath. "Mr. Harrison," I said. "I want the best, most ruthless divorce attorney you have. I don't care about the cost. I care about results. And I want to start today." There was another pause. And then I heard it. A low chuckle. "Mrs. Miller," he said. "I think you and I are going to get along just fine. Can you be at my office at 10? I hung up the phone. I looked at Marcus. The sun was fully up now. It was the first day of my new life. The life of a warrior. And my first battle was about to begin. Walking into that law firm was like stepping into another world. Everything was dark wood, polished leather, and quiet, intimidating efficiency. Arthur Harrison was an older man with eyes like a hawk. He didn't offer sympathy. He offered strategy. I sat with him and my new lawyer, a woman named Ms. Evans who looked like she ate nails for breakfast, and I told them everything. I didn't cry. I just laid out the facts. Then, I played them the video. Harrison watched the entire clip without a single change in his expression. When it was over, he just looked at Ms. Evans and nodded. We've got him. For the next week, I lived a double life. I went home on Sunday afternoon, just as planned. Derek and Audrey were gone, the house was clean. Too clean. He had erased all traces of her. When he got home with the kids, he greeted me with a hug. How was the spa? Did you have fun? It was wonderful, I lied, smiling right back at him. So relaxing. I played the part of the devoted wife while my legal team worked in the shadows. They filed the divorce petition in an at-fault state, citing adultery. They prepared motions to freeze our joint assets. They drafted a request for full emergency custody of the children. It was a meticulous, brutal campaign. The day came a week and a half later. A Tuesday. The kids were at school. I was working from home, sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop. Derek was in his home office down the hall. I knew the process server was coming. My heart was a steady, heavy drum in my chest. At 11:15 a.m., the doorbell rang. I'll get it. Derek called out, his voice cheerful. I heard the front door open. I heard a man's voice, low and professional. Derek Miller? Yes. You've been served. There was a long, dead silence. Then I heard the sound of thick paper tearing. I closed my laptop and waited. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Then, I heard a roar. It wasn't a yell, it was an animal sound of pure rage. The door to my husband's office flew open and slammed against the wall. He stormed into the kitchen, his face purple with fury. He was holding the divorce papers, shaking them in his fist. What is this? What the hell is this, Caroline? I looked up at him, my expression calm. I had practiced this moment in my mind 100 times. It's a divorce petition, Derek. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. A divorce? On what grounds? You have no grounds, he spat, his eyes wild. Adultery, I said, the word dropping into the air between us like a stone. His face went pale. You're insane. You're making that up. Who would believe you? A judge will, I said simply. He took a step closer, looming over the table. You listen to me, he hissed, pointing a trembling finger at my face. You will stop this right now. You will call your lawyer and you will cancel this, or I swear to God, I will ruin you. I'll tell everyone you're crazy. I'll tell them you cheated on me. I'll make sure you lose your job. I'll take the kids. You will have nothing. Do you understand me? He was a cornered animal, lashing out, threatening, trying to regain control. But I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I just looked at him, at this stranger with my husband's face. Are you done? I asked quietly. My calmness seemed to enrage him even more. He stared at me, his chest heaving. He opened his mouth to say something else, then seemed to think better of it. He turned on his heel and stormed back down the hall, slamming the bedroom door so hard a picture fell off the wall in the hallway. I didn't flinch. I just sat there, listening to the silence that followed, knowing the next move would be his. And I was ready for it. I stayed at the kitchen table, my hands resting on my cold laptop. I could hear muffled sounds from the master bedroom, drawers being opened and slammed shut, angry muttering. I pulled up the live feed from the bedroom camera on my phone, hiding it below the level of the table. And I watched. Derek was pacing the room like a caged tiger. He picked up my hairbrush from the vanity and threw it against the wall. He swept a stack of my books onto the floor. It was a pathetic, childish tantrum. Then, he stopped. He seemed to take a few deep breaths, and a strange sort of calm came over him. He walked over to the bed, sat down, and pulled out his cell phone. I watched, my breath caught in my throat, as he dialed 911. His face, which had been contorted with rage just moments before, suddenly crumpled into a mask of fear. He hunched over, making his voice sound shaky and breathless. "Yes, hello? I need help," he whimpered into the phone. "It's my wife, she's going crazy. She just attacked me." I felt a jolt, a surge of adrenaline. This was it. The move I hadn't anticipated but my lawyer had warned me about. The desperate, final gambit of a narcissist. She found out I know about her affair," he sobbed, the performance worthy of an Oscar. "She's threatening me. She threw a lamp at me. I've locked myself in the bedroom, but I'm scared of what she'll do next. Please, you have to send someone." And then I saw it. The camera angle was perfect. As he was delivering this heart-wrenching performance of a terrified victim, he lifted his head slightly. And for a split second, a grin flashed across his face. It was a triumphant, sociopathic smirk. He thought he had me. He thought he had won. He had no idea he was acting on a hidden camera, recording his own undoing. I calmly saved the video clip and stood up. I walked to the front door and opened it, waiting on the porch. I wanted them to see me standing there, perfectly calm, when they arrived. Minutes later, 2 police cruisers screamed up to the curb, lights flashing. 2 officers, a man and a woman, got out, their hands near their holsters, their expressions grim and ready for a confrontation. "Ma'am, are you Caroline Miller?" the male officer asked, his tone hard. "Yes, I am," I said quietly. "He's in the master bedroom. Down the hall, last door on the left." Just then, the bedroom door opened, and Derek came running out, his shirt artfully rumpled, his eyes wide with fake terror. He ran towards the female officer, grabbing her arm. "Thank God you're here," he cried. "She's insane. She tried to kill me." The male officer took a step toward me. "Ma'am, I need you to put your hands behind your back." "Before you do that, officer," I said, my voice as steady as a rock, "I think you need to see something. It will only take a minute." The officer hesitated. Derek started shouting. "Don't listen to her. She's a liar. Arrest her." I ignored him and held up my laptop, which I had retrieved from the kitchen. "This is a live feed from a security camera inside my home. I'd like you to see the 30 seconds of footage leading up to my husband's 911 call." The officer's eyes narrowed, but he motioned for me to play it. I turned the laptop around. The 4 of us stood there in my hallway as the video played on the screen. It showed Derek's tantrum. It showed him sitting on the bed. And then it showed his chilling transformation from rage to feigned panic, complete with the triumphant little smile he couldn't hide. It recorded every word of his fabricated story. I watched the officer's face. His expression went from suspicion to confusion, and then to cold, hard anger. He looked from the smirking man on the screen to the sobbing victim clinging to his partner's arm. Derek saw the look on the officer's face and his act faltered. That's fake. She edited that." The officer didn't even look at him. He just spoke into his radio. "We have a false report situation. The complainant is the perpetrator." He then turned to his partner. "Cuff him." The world seemed to move in slow motion. The female officer pulled Derek's hands behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound I had ever heard. The fake tears vanished, replaced by sheer, bug-eyed panic. "What are you doing? You can't do this. I'm the victim here," he shrieked as they led him out of my house, past the family photos on the wall, and into the waiting police car. I just stood there in the doorway, watching the flashing lights recede down my quiet suburban street. If you're still listening, please help me by liking this video and commenting the number 1 below. It lets me know you've given me a like, and it tells me that you're with me on this journey. Your support is a huge encouragement that cheers me on. Please, comment the number 1, and let me continue my story. After the police left, an unnatural quiet fell over the house. The flashing lights were gone, the shouting had stopped, but the silence that remained was heavy, suffocating. I locked the front door and walked through my home. It didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt contaminated. I knew what I had to do next, and it was the part one had been dreading more than any other. I had to tell my parents. My parents, Richard and Helen, were good people. Salt of the earth. They believed in family, in loyalty, in doing the right thing. They loved Derek. They saw him as the son they never had. And they adored Audrey. She was their baby, the sunshine of their lives. This news wouldn't just break their hearts, it would shatter their entire world. I couldn't do it over the phone. I drove the 40 minutes to their house, the hard drive with the video evidence on the passenger seat next to me like a ticking bomb. When I pulled into their driveway, my mother was in the front yard, tending to her roses. She lit up when she saw me. "Caroline. What a wonderful surprise," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of soil and lavender. "Is everything all right, dear? You look pale. Can we talk inside, Mom?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Is Dad here?" The concern on her face deepened. "He's in his study." "Caroline, what is it?" "You're scaring me." We sat them down in the living room, on the floral sofa that had been there for as long as I could remember. My father, a big, quiet man, looked at me over the top of his reading glasses. I told them I was filing for divorce. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest. My father just stared at me, his expression unreadable. "Why?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. "Did he do something?" I couldn't bring myself to say the words. "Not yet. It's complicated, Dad. But it's not something we can fix." "Is there another woman?" my mother asked, her eyes filling with tears. "I can't believe Derek would do that. He loves you so much." This was the moment. I took a deep breath. "Yes, Mom. There is another woman." I paused, steeling myself. "It's Audrey." The reaction was instantaneous and devastating. My mother made a small, wounded sound, like an animal in pain. She shook her head, a frantic, disbelieving gesture. "No. No, that's not possible. You're mistaken. Audrey would never. It's a lie." My father's face went rigid. He didn't say a word, but a dark flush crept up his neck. "I wish it was a lie," I said, my own tears finally starting to fall. "I have proof." I took out my laptop and placed it on the coffee table. My hands were shaking again. "I don't want to do this to you," I whispered. "But you need to see. You need to know the truth." I played them the video from the living room. The one from my girls' weekend. They watched in stunned, horrified silence. They saw my husband and their youngest daughter on my couch. They heard Derek call me boring. They heard Audrey ask about my father's inheritance. They saw him place his hand on her pregnant belly. When the video ended, the only sound in the room was my mother's ragged, heartbroken sobs. She was hunched over, her body shaking with grief. My father sat bolt upright, his face a mask of stone. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. He stared at the blank screen, then he looked at me, his eyes full of a pain so deep it took my breath away. "That man," he said, his voice thick with a rage I had never heard from him before, "is no longer welcome in this family. And she. God help me, he couldn't finish the sentence. He just shook his head, a single tear tracing a path down his weathered cheek. In that moment, we weren't just a family dealing with a divorce. We were a family that had been ripped apart from the inside out by the two people we should have been able to trust the most. My father stood up, his movements stiff, like an old man. He walked over to the telephone that sat on the small table by the window. My mother looked up, her face tear-streaked and puffy. "Richard, what are you doing?" "I'm doing what needs to be done," he said, his voice flat and cold. He picked up the receiver and dialed. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew who he was calling. He put the phone on speaker. It rang 3 times before she answered. "Hello?" Audrey's voice was bright, cheerful. It was the voice of someone who had no idea their world was about to end. "Audrey," my father said, and the name sounded like a curse on his lips. "It's your father." The cheerfulness vanished. "Dad? Is everything okay? You sound strange." "I'm with your sister," he said. There was a beat of silence on the other end. "Oh. Hi, Caro," she said, her voice suddenly cautious. "We've just seen something, Audrey," my father continued, his voice like ice. "A video. A video of you and Derek, in Caroline's house, on Caroline's couch. A video of him with his hand on your stomach." The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, the desperate search for a lie. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. "Caroline is probably making things up. She's been acting crazy lately." "Don't you dare," my father roared, his voice cracking with fury and pain. "Don't you dare call your sister a liar. We saw it with our own eyes. We heard every word. We heard you talk about my money. We know you are pregnant with his child." He took a deep, shuddering breath. "We did not raise you to be a homewrecker, especially not your own sisters. We did not raise you to be a selfish, greedy, immoral person." "Dad, please, let me explain," she started, her voice now panicked. "There is nothing to explain," he cut her off. "From this moment on, you are no longer our daughter. Don't call this house. Don't come to our door. You have made your choice. You have destroyed this family." My mother was sobbing openly now, her face buried in her hands. "You have a new family now with that creature. Go to them. We are done." He slammed the phone down into its cradle. The sound echoed in the silent, grief-stricken room. And just like that, it was over. My sister had been surgically removed from our family. It wasn't a victory. It was a tragedy. It was the necessary, brutal amputation of a part of us that had become diseased. The days that followed were a blur. Derek was released on bail, charged with filing a false police report. He wasn't allowed near the house or the children, thanks to an emergency restraining order my lawyer had secured. Audrey, I heard through the grapevine, had been kicked out of her apartment because my parents were the co-signers on her lease and they immediately had their names removed. She and Derek were staying in a cheap motel, the same kind I had used to catch them. The irony was not lost on me. My lawyer arranged a time for them to come and collect their belongings. I wasn't going to be there alone. Marcus and Lorraine came over, a silent, steady presence. My brother stood by the living room window, watching the street like a sentinel. They arrived in Audrey's little blue sedan. It looked pathetic parked in my driveway. Derek got out first. He looked terrible. His face was pale and unshaven, his eyes hollow. Then Audrey got out. Even from a distance, I could see the slight swell of her belly under her sweater. She wouldn't look at the house. She just stared at the ground. I opened the door before they could ring the bell. "You have 1 hour," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I handed Derek a stack of empty boxes. "Audrey is not allowed inside this house. She can wait in the car. You can bring her things out to her." He looked like he wanted to argue, but one glance at Marcus standing behind me, his arms crossed over his chest, made him think better of it. He just took the boxes and went inside. I stood on the porch, watching him. He moved through the house we had built together, pulling his clothes from the closet, his toiletries from the bathroom, like a ghost. He didn't say a word. The silence was thick with everything that had been destroyed between us. As he was carrying the last box out to the car, the school bus pulled up at the end of the street. My children got off, their colorful backpacks bouncing as they ran towards the house. They saw their father, standing there by a car with boxes. They saw Audrey, sitting in the passenger seat. My son, Ben, stopped in his tracks. My daughter, Lily, just stared. Neither of them ran to him. Derek looked at them, his face a mess of confusion and shame. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. He just loaded the last box into the car, got in, and drove away without a single word or a backward glance at his own children. That was the last time they saw him for a very, very long time. The divorce proceedings were, in a word, brutal. Derek hired a flashy lawyer who immediately went on the offensive. They filed motions accusing me of parental alienation, of being mentally unstable. They tried to argue that the video evidence was obtained illegally. They demanded half of everything, the house, my savings, my retirement fund, even a portion of my future salary as alimony. But my lawyer, Ms. Evans, was a shark. And she had the ultimate weapon, the truth. In court, she was magnificent. She calmly dismantled every one of their arguments. When they claimed the security cameras were illegal, she produced state statutes proving that a homeowner can record video inside their own home. When they accused me of being an unfit mother, she produced glowing testimonials from my children's teachers and our family doctor. The turning point came when she submitted the video of Derek's 911 call as evidence. The judge, a stern, no-nonsense woman in her 60s, watched the entire clip in chambers. When she returned to the bench, her expression was glacial. She looked at Derek, who was sitting next to his lawyer, looking smug. "Mr. Miller," the judge said, her voice dripping with contempt. "In my 20 years on this bench, I have seen a great deal of deceit. But the calculated, malicious nature of your false report to law enforcement, which I have just reviewed, is frankly appalling. You not only wasted precious city resources, but you attempted to use the authority of the court and the police as a weapon to terrorize your wife. It is an act of profound cowardice." Derek's smug expression dissolved. He turned the color of chalk. After that, it was a landslide. The judge threw out every single one of his demands. Because we were in an at-fault state, his proven adultery and his criminal attempt to frame me meant he was entitled to virtually nothing. The final decree was read a few weeks later. I was granted full legal and physical custody of our children. He was given supervised visitation twice a month, contingent on him completing an anger management course. The house, which my name was solely on the deed for and which I had made every mortgage payment on from my own salary, was declared my sole and separate property. Our joint savings, which were minimal, were split, but my retirement accounts and the college funds I had set up for the children were untouchable. He was awarded no alimony. In the end, he walked away with his car, his clothes, and a court order to pay child support. I saw him and Audrey in the hallway after the hearing. She was visibly pregnant now, her face pale and drawn. They didn't look like a happy couple starting a new life. They looked like two co-conspirators who had been caught. He wouldn't meet my eyes. She just stared at me, her expression a mixture of hatred and despair. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, not even satisfaction. Just nothing. They were strangers to me now. The months after the divorce was finalized were about rebuilding. The first thing I did was change the locks. The second thing I did was hire a company to come in and deep clean the entire house to wash away the ghosts. I sold the bedroom set from the master bedroom and bought a new one. I repainted the walls. Slowly, painstakingly, I started to reclaim my home. My parents were my rock. They were devastated, of course, but their love for me and their grandchildren never wavered. They were at the house constantly, helping with the kids, fixing leaky faucets, just being there. My father, who had always been so quiet, started taking my son to baseball games. My mother taught my daughter how to bake cookies in the same kitchen where she had first learned. They were trying to fill the hole that Derek and Audrey had left. My brother Marcus and his wife Lorraine were incredible. They took the kids on weekends to give me a break, a chance to just breathe. Lorraine would come over with a bottle of wine and we would just sit and talk for hours. There was no judgment, only love and support. The kids were resilient, as children often are. We started therapy, all three of us. There were hard days. My son would sometimes ask when Daddy was coming home. My daughter had nightmares. But we talked, and we cried, and we held each other tight. I was honest with them in an age-appropriate way. I told them that sometimes, grown-ups make very bad choices that hurt people, and that Daddy had made some choices that meant he couldn't live with us anymore. Derek and Audrey left town. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that his company had transferred him to a different state after the story of his arrest and the scandalous divorce got out. His promotion, the one he had sold his family for, never materialized. They were starting over, somewhere else, with their do-over baby. I tried not to think about them. They were a chapter of my life that was now closed. Slowly, a new normal began to emerge. A quieter, simpler life. It was a life centered on my children, my family, and my own healing. There were evenings spent doing homework at the kitchen table, weekends filled with soccer games and trips to the park. One day, I was sitting on the porch, watching the kids play in the yard, and a feeling of peace washed over me. It was the first time I had felt truly, deeply peaceful in over a year. The storm was over. We had survived. It's been over a year now since the divorce was finalized. Life is good. It's not the life I planned, not the one I dreamed of when I walked down the aisle all those years ago, but it's a good life. It's an honest life. My children are thriving. They are happy and healthy and surrounded by so much love. They rarely mention their father anymore. When they do, it's without anger or sadness, just a simple statement of fact. My parents are still my biggest supporters. Our bond, forged in the fires of that terrible time, is stronger than ever. They never speak Audrey's name. To them, she is simply gone. I know it pains them deeply, a wound that will never fully heal, but they have focused all their energy on what's left of our family. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I think about it all. I think about the signs I missed, the little lies I chose to ignore because the truth was too painful to face. I wore rose-colored glasses for my entire marriage, and it took a child's whisper to finally make me take them off. The scars are still there, of course. A betrayal that deep doesn't just disappear. But they don't hurt anymore. They're just a part of me now, a reminder of what I endured and what I survived. A reminder of how strong I can be when I have to be. I don't know what happened to Derek and Audrey, and I don't care to know. I hope, for the sake of that innocent child they brought into the world, that they somehow managed to find a sliver of the integrity they so carelessly threw away. That baby deserves better than the lies that created it. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it was a lot. But sharing it, it feels like the final step in closing that chapter for good. If you've been through something similar, or if you just listened to my story and it touched you in some way, please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Knowing we're not alone in these struggles, it means everything. Thank you for being here.